topic is quite interesting. The reason being it touches each of us, and especially people who stay in Mumbai. We know that how difficult it is to get housing finance. Yeah. So, and the other angle is, in India there is a saying that there are three things very important: roti, kapda, and makan. So kapda is not really an issue. Roti might become an issue now, with whatever is happening, inflation. Makan, of course, is a big issue for many of us here in the rooms and outside. And, with that, I would like to mention some figures, which I'm sure quite a few would be aware of. And there are several studies. The studies very clearly highlight that there is a gap of 25 million units in India. And there are some other figures as well on the rural India side, which is much larger. Somewhere I was reading that the gap in number of housing units is equivalent to the number of housing units that we have in the 4 metros. So there very clearly there is a huge market demand. At the same time, when we see the market penetration in terms of mortgage as a percentage of GDP, it is only 7%. And when we compare it with developed markets like US, UK, which is 80% plus, forget US, UK, look at East Asian economies. There it is 25% plus. So what is it that we are missing at our end? There is something which is clearly lacking. Also, when we look at banks versus housing finance companies, I was reading some numbers in 2000-2001, the market share of banks was pretty low. It was, I believe, less than 40%. It has now gone up to 65%, and simultaneously the market share of housing finance companies have declined. But the good news is that, some other interesting statistic, if you go to NHB website, you will find that the number of registrations in housing finance companies, it has gone up from 43 to 57. So 14 new HFCs have come up in the last few years, last 3-4 years. Very clearly, there is a new set of entrepreneurs who are coming up, and we have Rajneesh here. And so let me start with Rajneesh. Rajneesh, what excited you to get into this space, and how do you see, in terms of positioning your business vis-a-vis, banks and also the larger HFC?
So I think our experience might be a little bit different from the traditional, let's say, commercial investor or commercial, let's say, entrepreneur. We started our business about 5 years ago in 2008, and we are a group of, I would say, almost reluctant entrepreneurs. We didn't really want to start a housing finance company. It's just that when you looked around, if everybody, let's say, looks around in the urban area over here, you see a massive housing shortfall, and you see the conditions of people living in the homes that they live in, let's say the slum areas that they live in. And it's a bit surprising because some of them can actually afford to move out of the slums. Most of them, by the way, are renting. About 60 to 70% of people living in the slums that you see are actually renting in the slums. It's owned by somebody else. And they can actually afford to pay a little bit, move out of that home, and maybe get into a more formal home, a formal structure, and pay an EMI to a bank and actually own that home. And what I'm coming to is that, there is a significant amount of people living in the slums who earn around, let's say, 25 to 30,000 rupees a month. Maybe it's combined incomes, maybe it's joint, with their brothers, maybe it's with their wives, etc. Household income around that part, and can easily afford to pay, let's say, 8,000, 9,000 rupees a month as an EMI to own their own home. So about 5 years ago, when we started our company, we just wondered, why couldn't they, let's say, own a home and take a loan from a bank? Now, obviously, there are two problems with this. One is there is no home at 5 to 6 lakhs itself. There's a lack of developers in that space, but I'll come to that problem later. But there's also a massive lack of housing finance available for what is termed as the informal sector. Maybe there are negative lists for people who live in slums. So effectively, I would say for a range of reasons, maybe lower income, smaller ticket, etc., banks and most housing finance companies are not interested in this space at all. It all started actually when we went to meet with 50 Axis Bank drivers who were looking to buy a place in Nalasopara, and I was trying to help them, let's say, arrange a loan with, with another housing finance company, and unfortunately all of them came back saying, all were rejected, saying that they needed a guarantor. And that's how our company was really formed, because we felt that for them to pay a 5,000 rupee EMI, they were all earning around close to 15,000 rupees. They'd been there for 20, 25 years. It was a very doable loan, really. So that was the premise of how our company started. We felt there was a massive lack of focus by any mainstream financial institution to this segment. And it's even more shocking when you look at some of the figures. I think you didn't maybe mention this one, Anup, is that almost 90% of our workforce is really from the informal sector. So we have this very successful group of companies in the housing finance business, which is HDFC, Grah, Dewan, etc., who are really focused, and it's massive competition also in that segment, but they really focus on only 10% of our workforce. And the business has been pretty good. I mean, they all have very high returns of equity. They've been growing at about 30 to 35% compound for the last 7 or 8 years at least, I think, and very little NPAs as well. But actually 90% of the market has been traditionally ignored. So this really made us think that somebody needs to do it. Maybe it was from a point of view that it was almost like a national embarrassment that we didn't have an institution catering to a 90% of our workforce. But for a range of reasons, we felt there was a need for somebody to go out and do it, and that's really how MHFC really came out. And I'm really glad to say that, I mean, we are not the only ones out there now. I think there are almost, as you said, out of the 14 new HFCs which have come up, I would think that almost all of them, if not at least 12 or 13 of them, are focused on similar kind of niches, either rural or financially excluded or lower income. I think it's quite impressive, both from the point of view of other people who've come into the segment and the NHB for supporting it. And it really, I think, will help the whole ecosystem of houses really, coming up in the segment. Yeah.
Thanks, Rajneesh. Sujan, Rajneesh made a very interesting point on it. He touched upon a different customer segment altogether. So is your business model touching the same customer segment that Rajneesh is talking about, and how different you are in terms of positioning your business?
Yeah, I think what Rajneesh has still talked about, in fact, the example which he gave of the Axis Bank drivers, that was something I had worked on. I was with Axis Bank at that point of time. What essentially, I think when we set up Shriram Housing Finance in 2011, there was no other option of looking at anything else other than what was the model already set up by the parent companies, the group per se, both Shriram Transport and Shriram City. We are essentially looking at the underserved segment in the tier 2, tier 3 locations. So I think that was a given for us. When I look at that segment, what has happened, moment I talk about underserved, it is not that they are unbanked or that they don't have any financial exposure. Today, more than 1,600 clients we have live on our books. Every single one of them are bank account holders. Every single one of them are income tax assessees. They have a PAN card and all that. So it's not that they are greenhorns. It is that the exact segment which we had been talking about, that nobody's catering to them. Unfortunately, the PSU banks who were possibly best positioned to do that are not able to do that. Good for us. And we are now going ahead and looking at that particular segment. They are already, it's a segment we understand as a group, we understand them better. We hope that we are able to also respond to the needs better. The challenges which come in over there when we are doing it, unlike what, say, Rajneesh's team is doing, they are on a more comprehensive structure where there is a sort of an end-to-end solution provided. So you have the customer segment, there is a developer who is catering to the physical building up of the assets, and their team is, though many of these people would not be touched by the more aggressive lenders or more well-established lenders, their team is coming and forward and helping out those borrowers. For us, it's a different thing. What we are looking at is that people who are today unable to acquire a home because they don't get a finance. Some of them might be in areas where there are builders operating, they are looking at an apartment. Some of them might have a parental or a family piece of land on which they are looking to construct. Some of them are absolutely not sure what are they wanting to do. They are pretty much amazed when we give them a sanction, and then they go about looking at that, okay, what can I buy, which can I make my home? So for us, the entire segment is somewhere we have to really go and acquire. Customer acquisition is a hugely effort intensive. It is not a process driven, because every individual customer is actually a scheme by itself. Even they have income, but they are not very sure. If you today ask them that what is your income, I don't think they are in a position to really classify it and list it out. So actually our people would have to go onto the field, contact them, sit down with them 3 or 4 times and list out, okay, what are their flows of income, what are their obligations, what are the liabilities, and then come at a cash flow. So ours is a more of effort intensive, but as I was talking just in the pre-panel huddle, that we are hopeful that today the areas we are going and working, the segments we are covering, maybe the builders, the developer community would take a lot of encouragement from that and then start moving into those segments. West, especially Maharashtra and Gujarat, are reasonably covered by builders. Even in the smaller locations, builder presence is there. But you go deep south, you go into central India, you go into eastern India, I think it's still more of self-constructions. Today about 70% of my portfolio is self-construction. So people actually, challenge remains that from the time I give a sanction till the time the loan is drawn down is a very long stage. So these are some of the things we are hoping that players like us, having come in the last couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, we will be able to slowly encourage and give a direction for builders, give a direction for people to really start looking at apartment living, at more of vertical living instead of horizontal living. So I hope that those are things which work out going forward.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sujan. And let me turn over to Vishal now. You know, very interestingly what comes out that customer segment is there, untapped customer segment. Yes, there are challenges of delivery, you know, reaching out to those customers. It's a bit difficult process in terms of maybe educating them, understanding their cash flows and so on and so forth. But when you look at it from investment perspective, first of all, vis-a-vis banks, do you find the new HFCs which have come up, do you find them competitive enough? And does it really excite you as investment opportunity?
So Anup, I'm biased on this. As I said, I have 2 investments in this segment, so you should take all I say with not pinch of salt but buckets of salt. I have vested interest here. But let me tell you what attracted us to this space first. I think some of the names that Rajneesh talked about, Graha, HDFC obviously, and a lot of smaller players, and the fact that the growth's been sustained over a very significant period of time. And when we looked at stuff where there was a large underserved segment, whether it was the underserved segment as being defined by Sujan, where he's making inroads into existing customer bases, where housing finance was not available, or for Rajneesh, which is more on the affordable housing side, and again, financing was not available. So there was a clear segment that was not available of customers where financing was not available, there was their ability to pay. And it kind of, if you look at, what Sujan's example of Shriram City and Shriram Transport, what they did to 2 different segments early on in the late 90s and early 2000 could get played out in 2010 onwards on the housing finance side, where there's a customer segment which has been underserved for a variety of different reasons, and banks were there even in 2000, even in 90s, and there was this customer segment just because cost of opening a branch, restrictions, the fact that a customer acquisition and ability to assess is very different for a smaller, nimble organization or an organization that is built on different principles and values, where relationship becomes more important than just process, like in the Shriram case, then you have the ability to serve that customer segment. And also what we thought in some cases, the spreads were better. And so you were taking that risk, additional risk. But this was not like this is a long-term 10-year game where you have to compound every year, continue to grow your book, make sure that you're conservative early on. And the thing that works on the day one, it's very unattractive, let me tell you, because for a new company, I'm gonna barely get any leverage from the bank, because I have, let's say, only 50 crores, 100 crores of startup capital, even if I have that. And then I'm going to leverage that. It's not going to happen on day one. So leverage starts on year 2, year 3, year 4. So it becomes more attractive than onwards. Second is what rate am I going to get that leverage at? It's not it's not going to come at 10%, 11%, 12% on day one. It will be slightly higher. And then you work your way down towards a more attractive spread over a period of time. And with, institutions like NHB, which kick in at some point of time, you can really get your leverage cost down to a level where your spreads really become attractive over a period of 4-year, 5-year time frame. I think on day one, it's really unattractive. So you have to think about a 7, 8, 10-year horizon, and it becomes attractive because, this statistic, I don't know how true this statistic is, but HDFC in its, 33 years or 40 years of life has written off only 125 crores worth of loan on its balance sheet, that's all. They would have provisioned for several thousand crores, but that's the only thing that they have written off. So the NPAs are really low. I'm not saying the past should reflect what the future is, but as long as your risk management practices are at that size, then your NPAs could remain low, and as your spread goes up, the ROEs become really attractive at a point of time. So I think on day one, it's really unattractive, but as you build the book and compound the book, the market is large enough for this to have 20, 30, 40 different players. So it's not like one guy takes the market. So I think from an investor perspective, it's like if you're a long-term investor who believes compounding really works over a period of time and you back the right management team, it looks pretty interesting.
Thanks, Vishal. And, let me turn over to Amit now. Would you differ with Vishal in terms of what he's talking about, in terms of, the perspective that I want to share with you, that in the 90s also there were several HFCs which had come up, and then after a few years they actually went out of the market. Again, in the last few years we are seeing several HFCs coming up. Do you see space for so many HFCs in the market? And that's one. And the second point is that, again, how should HFCs, which HFCs would really attract you as an investment opportunity?
When it comes to whether there is space large enough for all these newer HFCs which are coming in, I think the market is staggering. Some of the numbers that Rajneesh mentioned, even you mentioned, I think the opportunity exists. For the last 10, 15 years, a lot of these large HFCs have just stayed away from trying to price the risk which is associated with the lower income segments or the rural or the unbanked maybe. And I think what this new HFCs are now doing is trying, these are people who have a background, who have some other kind of credit history, not the typical banking CIBIL kind of credit history that you're looking at. There are other sources that you can look at and price the risk associated with each of this individual. So when it comes to can you put together this large segment, 90% of the market that you're talking about, and build a business model, yes, I think there is a huge opportunity. So in that sense, I completely agree with what Vishal is saying, that companies which are emerging in this segment and which do a good job of pricing risk for the segment. Remember, it's not the same customer that HDFC was targeting, or the likes of Diwan or Grey were targeting. It's a very different customer base. And therefore, even to the earlier question on comparison of banks versus HFCs, I think that's why that question is not relevant. So is Rajneesh and Sujan competing with the likes of you sitting here, or is looking to target the likes of you sitting here? No. He would like to get 16% interest from you guys, but no, that's not the target segment. The target segment is someone whom banks are not really catering to right now, and there's a huge opportunity. And I think when we look at the next 20 years of growth that will come about, we'll see when this 90% which is not being targeted by banks or the large HFCs are targeted by the new HFCs which are emerging. And I think there will be a lot of money to be made. Not everyone will be successful, obviously, but people who do succeed, who get the execution right, both in terms of pricing, sourcing, and ensuring that the NPA levels are reasonable, they will over the long run make a lot of money in this segment.
Thanks a lot, Amit. In terms of positioning, I was also going through some numbers in developed markets like US and UK, and very interestingly what I found that housing finance, specialized housing finance entities have a big role to play. And some numbers in UK, probably 2009-10, although banks are dominant there as well in terms of 60% market share, but a big chunk is also they're left for the housing finance companies or specialist housing finance lenders. So very clearly, in terms of whatever market opportunity you have highlighted to customer segment, of course one has to see how to evaluate those customers, manage asset quality and so on and so forth, but the opportunity is there. So now let's move over to a few challenging areas. And let's touch upon the liability side first. And I would start with Rajneesh again. Rajneesh, you started this business, I guess, about 4 or 5 years back. And it would be interesting to hear from your side that how you are managing your borrowing side. And do you really see any challenges there? Because one of the key issues would be how you fund your business, because deployment opportunity is there, but you need to have enough money being pumped into your business so that you can pump out. And at the same time, do you get this money at a reasonable cost? So what are the challenges you are facing there and how you're managing that?
Right. I think Vishal actually touched upon it perfectly when he said that this is a slightly longer term business, and it's good that you have a longer term view on this, because definitely in the first couple of years, one is equity based. I mean, there's no question that banks are not going to be running out, to give you money at this stage. And as it is with businesses like ours, there is a healthy dose of skepticism on whether, customers are going to be able to pay you back or not. But I think, now the situation is quite different. To get to, the aim should be, I think one has to think about growing gradually. I think, maybe in the first year or the second year, you can maybe do a 1x, 2x, maybe, leverage, and then you have to aim to maybe get to 4x in about 3 years or 4 years, and grow to a situation where it becomes commercially attractive to give you a good return on equity. I think you've got to be somewhere between 8 and 10x leverage, which is what GRR and HDFC are at typically. So, but it takes baby steps along the way to get there. Now, I think in our particular case, it's about 5 years down the road now, since we started, maybe about 4 years of operations. And I have to say that we have no issues in terms of raising debt at all. The first couple of years, obviously, we had to, prove ourselves, prove the model, etc. But now we're at a stage where, firstly, I think maybe maybe all of us have that, all the new companies have a similar kind of a sweet spot, is what I would say, of the NHB, of commercial banks, and maybe even HFCs. I'll come to that also as a good source of funding. But let's say for the NHB, given the fact that we are focused on the weaker section, on financially excluded people, I mean, our average loan size is only 4 to 4.5 lakhs today, and most of our customers are earning less than 15,000 rupees a month. So clearly this is a very targeted spot for the NHB. So we've been able to get almost 50% of our funding requirements today comes from the NHBs, which is quite positive. And I think it took us, let's say, 3 years to get there, because they have certain guidelines. But after we've, let's say, made that threshold, I think it's come forward, and they've been very, very supportive. Commercial banks as well, because of the fact that all our loans really fit into the priority sector guidelines. Mostly, I would say, there is one particular RBI cap which says that, proviso, which is that, their best home loan rate should not be, 2% lower than our home loan rate. So it does slightly inhibit some lenders, but actually our home loan rates are between 11 and 13%. So most of our loans actually qualify for PSL for banks that refinance us as well. So we've really not had an issue in terms of raising money from the banks also. And I think the third and quite interesting source for us is actually other HFCs. There are larger HFCs, like say HDFC, etc., who are quite supportive. I mean, they see our business as being quite niche and interesting and something that they can't do directly. But in a way, we could be construed as a kind of a consolidator of housing loans for them. So they don't want to deal directly with a plumber or mechanic or driver or maid or something. It's too small in ticket size, and it's maybe a bit hassly in terms of how do you assess their credit worthiness, or their processes are quite different. But let's say if we went to them with say 100 loans aggregating say 5 crores, or 1,000 loans aggregating say 50 crores or something, it would become far more interesting, especially because we add a layer of capital as well to that, because they're just refinancing and not directly taking the credit risk, except from the underlying mortgage, of course, if we don't repay the loan. So I think there are a number of interesting refinancing sources, but I think that comes to what you said, most critically, what's the cost of it, and how do we then price ourselves accordingly. So I think we've taken a very clear, right from the start, our positioning has always been that we want to benchmark ourselves against the best in the business, which is, let's say, HDFC or Growth Finance, and that gives you a kind of a gross spread of around 4%. So adding up all these kind of various sources of debt, we find that our lending, we can lend at about 11 to 13%. On average, I would say our lending rate is about 12.5%. And that gives us a comfortable spread, the similar kind of spread that we're talking about, mainly because the NHB's rates are obviously a lot lower than that of HDFC or that of the commercial banks. But that's how we fund ourselves right now, and I'm saying that we are flexible enough to keep changing that. Tomorrow, I'm just giving an example, we can't permanently depend on the NHB. So the NHB, let's say, their share reduces as a percentage of our debt, then maybe our pricing will have to go up accordingly. But that's what we're trying to maintain, to pass on whatever the costs are, add on the, let's say, 3.5 to, 3.5 or maximum 4% gross spread to the customer, and that's our business model.
Thanks. Sujan, is your experience different, given that you are a much younger company compared to Rajnish's company?
Okay, this question right now for me is hypothetical because I'm still a debt-free company. Because we are new, and in the group, I think, fortunately, the way the group had functioned, we really don't face a problem about getting equity funding. But when I discuss it in a larger group, especially over the last few months, we have been talking with other HFCs, discussing about ways and means to have a more sort of a representative body having it in the HFC's space. I think debt is a problem because for many of us, like even for me, the segment I'm catering to, it's informal, it's underserved. As I was maintaining that it is a customer acquisition is a hugely effort intensive, it's a manual effort intensive. Unlike what possibly Rajnish's model is, which is, it's being led at a more consolidated level. My interest rates are substantially higher than his, but possibly if I look at my NIMs, maybe our NIMs will come, they will merge. But where we get the problem is that we and people like us, today if we are approaching banks, we cannot, whatever we get a funding for cannot be on the priority sector because of the 2% cap. So that is a major problem that we are facing right now. For me, it's at the back of the mind, but for others, it's a real problem. How do we get a funding? So issue is that as of now, the NHB funding is one of the vanilla sources of debt raising, which is possible, but as Rajneesh pointed out, there are certain criteria, guidelines, 3 years, there's a book size, there's equity participation, equity levels and all those things. So initial stages, I don't see the smaller HFC, smaller in that sense, not in terms of AUM, but in terms of the initial capitalization. It is going to be a very difficult and very, very prickly path of growth. What is the solution? Vanilla funding, vanilla debt raising, I think is difficult. So there has to be a lot of innovative schemes. There are opportunities like portfolio sale, because most of us are, we are originating on the priority sector side, but that also there is a typical minimum vintaging and all that. So it is like a more or less an orphaned infant. The infant who is still very, very juvenile, very young, but doesn't have the parents really to nurture, hold it close to the chest, cradle it in its arms and going forward. So I personally feel that there is a very major challenge and which has to be looked at sooner than later.
Okay, so moving away from debt a bit, of course, it's very interesting to get two different perspectives on raising debt. But if you look at it from banks' perspective, they would obviously like to see that a company is well capitalized. And there is a bit of a contradiction here from equity investment perspective. You need to leverage to generate a decent ROE. And the other interesting point which Vishal was mentioning, that you need to have a longer term horizon for exit. So, these are a couple of issues which are coming out right now. So I would like to ask a question to Amit. From your perspective, when you are evaluating potential opportunities in the housing finance space, what specifically you are looking at and what challenges you are facing really, although you may want to do transactions?
I think the challenge that we mostly see both among all the HFCs is, okay, one, there is a large market that exists, there is a clear demand and supply gap, but what are you building internally to not just tackle the current market opportunity which is small, but to maybe target a market opportunity which is 20 times larger than this, or maybe 50 times larger than this. So what organizational building is happening that can allow them to scale in the next 5 years or 10 years to a target of 50 times the market that they're targeting? So a lot of times when we see at a small scale, it's often easy to cherry pick the customer whom you're lending to. You can ensure that your credit standards are robust. You can ensure that your NPA levels are low enough. But as you scale now this system, as you grow, you need to bring in processes and systems. Now in a segment where it's so intensive that you need to really, as Sujan mentioned, each person is a scheme in itself. How do you scale then? So I think that's the challenge that we see. Okay, are there enough businesses which are building to address our opportunity which is 50 times larger than what it is? We don't see challenges in terms of market. We don't see really challenges in terms of management capabilities also, because the management teams which are addressing this market are coming with a vision, okay, that this is a nascent opportunity, but by doing X, Y, Z right things, we can address this market. But using technology, using analytics, I think the reason being this is still a fairly young segment. So once we move from this early cherry picking model to a more scalable model, that's when decisions, more money will come easily to the segment. Right now, a lot of people will be betting on the growth of the segment, hoping that these management teams are able to build in scalable systems in place.
Vishal, would you like to add or contradict something here?
I think that's fair enough. You will, as you scale, you need to have organization and scalable system in place. I think the most critical thing for us to look for is, I think, the management team and the founder team. I think a large percentage of people who are gonna so it's predominantly a financing business at the end of the day. You're going to raise debt and you're going to raise equity. So you need to be extremely financially sophisticated to be able to do that. And there's this other part which is basically in your asset side, lending side, process systems, find the right side of customers, kind of score them well, whether it's relationship driven, process driven, get to a stage where you build your book more conservatively and take the risk along as you continue to scale, because at that point of time you probably can take a little bit more risk once you have a certain AUM size versus taking it early on, which also affects your ability to raise debt at that point of time. So I think the key for us is what the management and the founder brings to the table, how he's going to think about it. Does he have relationships in place? I see a lot of early lending actually happens because of relationships. It's because, and I'll tell you, our experience here is quite opposite here. Public sector banks probably lend the first, then some of the private sector banks, even for such early stage companies, where public sector banks have stepped up and given limits of 4 times leverage, 3 times leverage to start with on a small 30, 40, 50 crore equity base. And as you scale, they're happy to take up to 6. And it's partly because I think the public sector banks, some of them actually realize that I really don't have the ability to do this. I'm backing this bunch of guys, and as you said, there's a double capital availability on top of it, so their exposure is really low. And a lot of these actually, if you look at, there used to be Can Bank Home Finance in the 90s. All these banks these are mothballed housing finance companies that most of the public sector banks have, whose asset size, maybe with the exception of PNB Housing, everybody is somewhere in the range of 250 to 2,000 crore. No one scaled because no one's put an effort around that side. So they understand this space, they want to scale this, and they see these set of entities through which they can scale their portfolio without taking inordinate amount of risk. But the private sector banks, for whatever their own reasons, they don't step forward as quickly as possible. They're probably the last ones to come on the bandwagon. So I think the ability to raise debt and equity is a fairly large percentage of whether you can drive investor returns or not, and what you're able to do it. Because at the end of the day, when it goes public or somebody's going to look at it, he's going to price it on ROE and ROA at the end of the day. That's the parameter, because you can't say I've it's not like I have an IP or a technology. A lot of people can do this out there. What you have built and what your actually financial performance is the parameter that you're going to get valued and bought at or traded at.
I'm Ashish Agrawal, I'm an investment banker, and we are helping some of the housing finance companies, newly registered housing finance companies which are struggling for scaling up and all basically. You see that housing finance is the sector where it's a pet baby for the all banks actually. In terms of housing finance, the loan size of ticket size of about 20 lakh, 5 lakh rupees, every bank is ready to give the funding at 10.5% or 11% actually, which is not available even at double A rated company in the sector, in the industry. So you see that AAA, the individual who is raising housing finance is a AAA customer for bank actually. But the challenge is coming the ticket size of 5 lakh rupees, 7 lakh rupees, 4 lakh rupees or 10 lakh rupees actually. Where this is not the cup of tea of any commercial bank. If somebody is going to the branch for raising this kind of money, nobody is giving the attention actually, and he do not have all kind of papers, all kind of income proof and everything is not there actually. So the demand is there, gap is there and market is there actually. There is no doubt in it actually. But you see for scaling up of any NBFC, whether it's a housing finance or other finance, there is a challenge for raising debt from the market actually, because you can't dependent on the equity for scaling up this thing actually. So what is the challenge is coming, as Rajesh told, that they are lending at 11 to 13%, which looks amazing actually, because I am associated with 7-8 companies. They all are in the range of 16 to 18% rate in the market actually. So if you are managing it, that's very, very good actually. But again, you are coming up within the band of 2% of RBI. But you see your rating, credit rating. If you approach to the bank, even a priority sector lending and all, your credit rating will not be AA or A kind of situation actually. So but the spread which they will put on your lending, that will be definitely more than 2% or 3% actually. So it's a chicken and egg story. RBI is not clear what to do, because in the starting they have allowed this priority sector tag up to any kind of rate the NBFC can charge. Then they banned it. Then they have allowed 2% cap on that actually. So this sector definitely, unless until the RBI will not come up with some kind of clear guidelines where they should give some kind of relaxation, because for a funding of 5 lakh rupees or 7 lakh rupees, it's not possible that the company can manage within 2% of the cap actually. There is a delivery cost actually. So 3 to 4% delivery cost is there actually. So somebody has to take with the RBI or all NBFC micro housing finance companies should approach to RBI, and there should be some kind of I think policy change or something like that actually.
Okay, thanks a lot. Let me ask Rajneesh, how you are managing within the cap as he's mentioning, and then let me, also request Sujan to, really share why, is this really required? You can still do business without having it, right? You're doing it. You're demonstrated. So it would be good to have views from both.
No, I think our situation is a little bit unfair, so I don't want to say that this is a continuing kind of a situation, but as of now, we get about 50% of our funding, as I said earlier, from the NHB. So just to give an example, the NHB funding is, let's say, about 7.5, and or let's say, 7.5, and the banks is, let's say, about 11. That's what we are typically at. Then I think your cost of funds is close to, for us, is about close to 9%. So we can actually afford to price it at about 11 to 13% for our customers, and still have a gross spread of around 3.5, which is very comfortable for us right now. I'm not saying that the situation is going to continue. I think the situation of the spreads being at 3.5% is absolutely necessary for us to be financially sustainable and to have a business where, people will invest in us and the business will grow accordingly, because it's a capital hungry kind of a business. But I think at this stage, this is our business model, and the NHB is quite supportive because of the fact that we have a customer base which is totally in line with what the government is trying to help and support as well. And maybe 5 years down the road, if the NHB either does not get the kind of treasury support that it currently gets from the budget, then maybe our pricing will have to become 15%, because all we'll have to borrow from is, let's say, from the banks or from other HFCs at about 11 to 11.5%, and price it like Shriram is doing it, maybe, as you said, I think if I remember right, about close to 15. The business model might have to change. But as of now, we seem to have a good source of funding, and we want to pass on that to the customer.
Yeah, I think carrying on from where Rajneesh left off, his model is slightly different right now, and going forward, I think it'll either globally or pan-India, the models have to change for all of us, which would need the involvement of more builders, the involvement of more strategic delivery process. For us, the delivery is still very informal. So my cost of acquisition is pretty high. But I agree with you, Mr. Agarwal, that something has to give somewhere. It has to give either by means of RBI changing in the outlook, which also can happen because, see, this is a recent development. This 2% spread is a recent development, so a different economic scenario could bring about a relaxation in that also. And we might see this spread aspect being done away with. Or subsequently, alternative means of debt raising has to be made available. Today we are talking about, I think even Vishal, Amit, they can talk about, there's I mean, you are getting, I think, the more of preferential capitals, tier 2, you look at structured instruments, which even helps your ALM positions. So things are bound to somewhere impact and open up new avenues. As of today, banks are becoming pretty aggressive on housing finance because that is one of the safest, most secure methods of funding. I know of banks whose earlier retail portfolio maybe 30%, 35% were housing finance. Today it is closer to 90%. Their whole delivery is on housing finance because the other aspects, automobiles, car loans, personal loans, are pretty much, they could be termed as risky. So from those point of view, I'm sure somewhere there would be channels developing which would help people like us or people like, already if I know IFMR works in conjunction with smaller housing finance companies, they are trying to act as a via media also with a lot of stake in that, in trying to channelize debt from other housing finance companies into smaller ones, so as to develop having a process of a future on-tap sort of a securitization process. So lots of innovative and non-traditional means of debt is coming up, and I'm sure that will start happening because even the regulators, RBI also would have to at a certain stage realize that small housing finance companies are doing something for the economy which is very important, which is extremely important, and an HDFC or the larger players cannot do that. So these are areas which need to be covered.
Just out of the kind of conversations related to housing and housing finance one hears when one is with friends or at a party or things like that, one of the things that I, didn't see the panel touch on is that there are a series of factors which are changing the dynamics as far as housing as a commodity is concerned. One is economic, and economic when I'm talking about one, slowdown, two, the number of years of income it takes to own a house out here, which are two factors which are probably at present very badly stacked against Indians. There are some demographic factors like a large young population which is there, and therefore they would be at a stage in life where earnings may not be very high, so while future earnings may look good for them, current earnings may not be good. And there is the cultural thing, especially if you see in Gen Y, they're already talking about the non-owning culture. Whether it is cars, whether it is this thing, they're not going to own something. And we have seen manifestations in this in housing. In Japan, there was a whole generation who said we don't want to own a house because it's just way too costly to do it. I would rather spend on lifestyle and go ahead and do that. We are beginning to see that in countries like US and UK where, for example, Blackstone is in the business of renting out and mortgaging rather than people going ahead and owning a house. If I look at it from an analyst perspective and I say, hey, there are so many factors which are stacked against housing given these three kind of factors which are at play, how do you, especially the people who are from the financing industry, how do they think in spite of this just the large population size or the underserved this thing makes up for all of this, or do they factor some of these things in when they look at housing finance as a business here?
So let me address a few of that. I think we probably focused, I think the panel got converted into not housing finance, but affordable housing finance companies. And I think most of the views that you heard were essentially coming from that perspective. none of us, I think, are looking to fund housing finance companies which make 50 lakh average ticket size as their loan or 1 crore as average ticket size as their loan. I think that's completely skewed in a lot of metros, and I think we don't have any competitive advantage vis-a-vis an HDFC or a large bank or anybody else. There's no way we can compete with them on financing and anything else. So I think this is very specific to a smaller niche segment where essentially people still want to own houses, and this is not necessarily people who live in metros, but necessarily a lot of tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns, where still ownership is a big piece. I think for people to, you and I do a very great math calculation about saying, hey, should I buy a 5 crore property in Bombay, whereas the rental is 2.5% yield. But if you go and ask your dad and my dad, he said, you live in a rented house? You haven't bought a house? So, and I think if you go to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, that segment kind of behaves very, very differently than the segment probably which sits within this 5 square kilometer area. We have a very different worldview, and tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 has a very different worldview, because in their lives of last 20, 30 years, they've seen one single segment that's outperformed everything else is what he bought at, 500 rupees a square feet is probably at 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, whatever that number is. So housing is not necessarily a mode of consumption, but for a large percentage of population, it's also about creating safety net for your family and for yourselves because people think about capital appreciation. We probably don't think so in a current environment, current economy, whether I'm going to pay 5 crore for a house, 10 crore for a house. But a guy who's buying 600 square feet property somewhere in Panvel, Lamboli, or, and if you look 6 years out, 10 years out, and the cost of that house was 7 lakhs, 8 lakhs, 10 lakhs, that's a very different segment that we are talking about. So I think it's a little bit of perspective from at least what segmentation as investors we look at. I think we would be crazy to say we will go and fund somebody who can compete with HDFC at that loan ticket size.
Yeah, and I would, sorry, go ahead, Amit.
So the thing that you mentioned on this, there has been a major change over the last 20 years in terms of how we look at housing. I think the difference that when we look at it and we see our parents, for them, if they got to a situation where at the age of 50, they were able to buy a house, they would have realized what can be called as the Indian dream. And we still think that housing continues to be, the Makaan continues to be an integral part of the Indian dream. But the change that has happened is now 3-4 years out of college, you're looking to buy a house. And while 20 years back, no one was buying housing using finance, they were probably buying it by asking their brother or someone else in the family for money. Now they're going to a bank, they're going to HFC to lend them money according to that. But I don't see a shift in the kind that you're mentioning, that people are no longer looking to buy houses. Housing, we feel, at least I feel, that it continues to be a very important part of the Indian dream. And over the next 10 years or 20 years, we don't see that changing substantially.
So I would just like to add a couple of points where, again, we have only maybe less than a minute left. I don't know if we have room for another question or not. One last question, but I just want to make...
Let us park it, no questions.
A couple of points here. One, in terms of macro factors, what you're saying is absolutely right. It's very clear that with GDP growth, the housing demand also goes up. In terms of increased urbanization, increase in disposable income, all these are very important factors. But at the same time, if you look at some other factors, for example, I was reading somewhere that in terms of affordable housing projects, it has increased significantly. There were about 23 odd projects in 2010, which has gone up to 103 projects. And there are some pockets, for example, Indore. Suddenly, there are many developers who have sort of created such stock. And I just very quickly, I would like to request maybe Rajneesh, that when you are looking at these opportunities for lending, are you seeing enough demand or you are seeing a slowdown there? Because that can probably address this question. in reality.
No, I'll just like to add with what Vishal was saying, exactly right. I think we're looking at a different segment completely where the demand is unbelievably, kind of unsatiated over here. And exactly, what he said, it's a dream for them to own a home. So the demand is way outstripping the kind of supply that's coming on. So yes, places like Indore and, maybe Surat, etc. These are the first few projects which have come on board, which have a proper developer and they're building it, let's say, a kind of a small colony or something, which is, say 500 homes or something. So, I mean, they pretty much get outsold, immediately.
Whenever we used to assess profiles for housing, we used to understand their ability to service and their continuity in career for for you can say fixed obligation to income ratio. But while we look at this particular segment where you are planning to address, it is a highly volatile segment and there can be a lot of delinquencies. So it may even lead to taking harsh steps repossessing or so. So won't it add to the cost and it might make a heavy dent in the margins over a period of time?
Firstly, I'd like to say that I think today a banker's job is more in dicey situation than a pani puri guy on the street, right? So I think in terms of volatility, I think that he'll probably find something faster. But secondly, you're absolutely correct on one point, is that it's difficult to enforce. There's no question. We may have SARFAESI protection, let's say, not specifically right now, but the point is that most banks and HFCs do have that. It will be more tricky to evict somebody, if they are from the lower income, etc. So I do take that as a risk possibility. What I would like to say that literally on March 31, we have given about 3,500 loans till date, and on March 31, we did not even have a past due. Forget about it, NPA. So I'm not saying that this is going to continue forever, but I just think that, coming back to the point that you made, this is a dream for them to own a home. They're currently living in a slum. There's no security, there's no savings asset being created, etc. They've got a chance to, let's say, move into a more secure kind of surroundings, having put in 30% down payment firstly, and then the value of the home has typically gone up in the last 4-5 years also. So the implicit, let's say, equity in this is more than 50% or so. So I think they would do anything to, let's say, protect that home. And I think that's what we're finding, that customers are remaining true to paying off their EMIs, and I'm sure that cannot be a continuing thing forever, but it's a very important asset for most Indians.
Yeah, just maybe half a minute I'll take on that. These are not borrowers who are subprime. They are borrowers who have never been borrowers earlier. So the classification is not there. In fact, again, Shriram Transport, Shriram City, they have proved that even other asset classes, their behavior has been impeccable. So from that point of view, essentially jury is still out. I personally, after having worked in an Axis Bank, in metro locations in large cities, and having worked in Shriram Housing, I would possibly say that the behavior, financial discipline of this segment is better than their metro counterparts, even the higher income ones.
So, yeah, I'll just take half a minute to conclude. First of all, thanks to the panelists and thanks to the participants for the questions. But basically what I understand that, 5 years back when I was looking at this particular space, there were very few companies targeting this affordable housing segment, and now we see quite a few of them. And HDFC started in 1977 and we know where it is today. So it's one of the strongest financial services entities in India. I do hope that after 10-15 years, probably we'll see, a couple of such strong companies in this particular space. So that is where I would like to end the panel discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.